Hello and welcome to the next instalment of Project Nolan, our review of all of Nolan's films, starting with his super low budget student-esque film The Following, right through to actually his new film Tenet. So there will be 11 reviews in this series eventually, but what Matt and I have been doing is ordering the films from 10 to 1 in terms of favourites, really, I suppose, rather than necessarily standards of quality or anything like that. Would you think that's fair? Is that a fair describe? Just have we listed them in that way?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, obviously.
So. I mean, we've said a couple of times, haven't we, that I don't really think necessarily for myself at least, my top 10. It's not. I'm not listing it in terms of the best technical films. It's the 10. It's ordered in what resonates with me.
Yeah. I'm the one we're doing today. So this is a film that came in at your number 5 and my number 2. No, your number. Yeah, that's 5. Right, isn't it? Yeah. 5 and my number 2. And as I've alluded to before, all of my top 3 had there was a point in time where they were at number 1. I think this one included. I'm really excited to talk about this film, actually, and I'm really not sure where I'm going to start. But this is the film The Prestige, which is the poster there. And actually, I think of all the films, this is the worst poster. I don't think this poster does it any credit whatsoever at all. So I've found this poster, which I think is much better and much more in keeping with the film itself. It's got a sort of an element, style and mystery, and almost sort of slight oddness to it, which I think feels much better.
It's definitely more suitable. I mean, there's obviously once you see in the film, there's some elements in there that you'll understand. But I think, given the way the film is constructed and how compelling it is and how engaging it is and all the different twists and turns, this poster would make you expect something a bit
definitely
unexpected.
Because for me, in many ways, this is Nolan almost turned up to 11. I think there's so much about this. In fact, just to kind of let you off the hook a little bit, I'm going to issue the spoilers straight away, because I can't for the life of me think of a way that you might give a synopsis of this film without spoiling it, because there's twists and turns from the very start. It's not, so go on in, give you your best shot, and you don't worry about spoilers. That's people can go away and watch it, and then they can listen to this. So go on, Matt, give us a synopsis of the film.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you said that, because so much happens in this film that it's difficult to know where even to start or what to include and what not to include. So I'll just give an overview of the events. And there may be some spoilers in there, but I'll try and avoid them for now. Okay, so it's, as you said, it's Nolan's, is it his fourth film?
It would be his 5th, because it came after Batman Begins. As we said yesterday, it was the kind of, after being given the I suppose the studio's trust to handle the franchise, he was also given the opportunity to make sort of his own sort of passion projects in between, which is where we see this and the Inception as well. But
well, it's based on a novel. It's an adaptation, so it's based on a novel by Christopher Priest. And basically the film, it takes place in 1890s London, so during like the end of the Victorian era. And the main 2 characters are 2 what are known as shills or stooges, and basically they're aspiring magicians, and they are Robert Angiers, played by Hugh Jackman, and Alfred Borden, who's Christian Bale. And at the start of the film, they're shills, and they're learning the trade, aren't they? And they work for an older magician. And early on in the film, Angiers, or Hugh Jackman's Angiers' wife, is an assistant, and she drowns in a escape trick in a water tank. And this causes tension because it's Borden, or Christian Bale's magician character, who ties the knot. And obviously, it's interesting, I found, and I thought this comes up in some of his films. We're unsure. I mean, Christian Bale's character is unsure whether he tied the knot too tight or what type of knot he tied. And that then causes a big rift between the 2 characters, doesn't it? Because when Borden reveals that at the funeral to Angiers does not, basically blames him for the death of his wife.
Yeah.
The rest of the film then is split between those 2 characters as they go and pursue independent careers as magicians. But Angiers then Angiers is the better showman, isn't he? And he's the better at selling the act, but the better magician and the more talented magician is Borden.
Some might say he is the greatest showman.
Yeah. Well, I was worried about that because my daughter was watching The Greatest Showman again recently. So I'm thinking, if I start talking about Greatest Showman, you have to let me know. Because aesthetically they're quite similar. So Borden then develops an illusion called the disappearing man that Angiers can't for the life of him figure out how the trick is executed, can he? So he becomes obsessed with not only the idea of solving this trick, but perfecting it, making it better, and also destroying Borden in the process. And the film then, the narrative then follows their two separate lives, and there's flashbacks and there's elements of narration and things like that, where we're looking through a diary of Angiers. And there's lots of twists and turns. But basically, at the end of the film, the rivalry escalates to such a point that it becomes violent, and Borden ends up in jail.
Yes.
Because he's blamed for the death of some of the people involved in Angiers' tricks, which we'll talk about later on, I'm sure.
That was phenomenal, actually, because you've given a really good overview of that without really spoiling too many. I mean, like I said, it's impossible to not reveal too many things. Even, Angiers' death of his wife at the beginning is a twist right from the start. You don't see that coming. But that was really well done.
Well, one of the things I found this difficult is I said I just thought, don't think about it, just try and go through it linearly, what you know from the film. Yes. Because you're right. I mean, it's difficult to know what to spoil and what's not, because there's some things in the film that I think are maybe unresolved, or at least watching it a second time, you're thinking, actually, these are very unreliable characters, actually.
Yeah, so, both of them. Because they lie to each other constantly, and there are twists and turns. So one spoiler is that whilst reading the diary, part of the diary becomes aware that it's been stolen and being read by the other one. And then the same thing happens again with the other. I think the other one steals a book written by the other one. And so the same tricks are used.
It starts it starts to reference the reader, and I was like, you are being tricked and conned.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
The whole thing is told in various flashbacks and flash forwards. I mean, I've watched this a number of times, but I didn't realize just how convoluted the flying backwards and forwards is. I wouldn't even begin to unpick it and say what order things actually happened in.
Yeah.
And you've also got several voiceovers, which makes the whole thing. Yeah. Seeing as these are, as you said, shills, these are kind of con artists and unreliable in the first place, they become more and more unreliable as things go on.
Yeah. And it's, I mean, again, I'm sure we'll hit upon this throughout these video series, but this idea of films about films. I mean, the film is called The Prestige, which refers to the final act of a magic trick, isn't it? The third and final part. The film itself is The Prestige. I think at the end you realise the film itself has been sort of teaching you about these tricks and the mechanisms behind them.
This is the film, more than any of the others, that is about filmmaking, and I think it's a love letter to filmmaking, which is brilliant considering it's set in a time that pre-films or around the birth of cinema. There are so many clues to tell us that this is about filmmaking, right from the description of the pledge, the trick and the prestige, which describes the three acts often that films follow. There's constant references to paying close attention and talking about how people love to be fooled, is something that's referred to again and again. And it's about an audience's relationship with the cinema, and every twist and turn in this film you're supposed to enjoy and love, because that's what the cinema is all about. I think there couldn't be a better film about films without when there are no movies referenced in this film whatsoever.
I find that the setting is quite interesting in that respect, like the 1890s. Because you're right. I mean, it's one of the things I found was that our entertainment and what we as audiences want for entertainment is quite universal.
Yeah.
And this film takes place during the 1890s. It was during like that real technological revolution, and this is when cinema emerged.
Yeah.
And cinema, it took over and like killed like that vaudeville stage show entertainment. So it's like another level there. It's amazing.
It's interesting because, of course, what you've touched upon there is a key part of the film is that advancement in technology. When Angiers is trying to work out how Borden does the disappearing man trick, he seeks help from a real life historical character played brilliantly and rather innovatively by David Bowie, of all people. And that's, of course, he plays Elon Musk, doesn't he? I mean, he plays Nicholas Tesla, which is not only a genius bit of casting, but it's a really interesting character to have in this film. And what does that bring to the movie?
I think just looking at the film, like genre, I mean, it adds an element of science fiction to the film, doesn't it? Because we are into that realm. I'm aware of some of Tesla's things, and he invented certain things. I'm not sure if teleportation was one of them, but it adds that sort of scientific, the sci-fi element to it. One of the things I watch, as you said, it's like almost like these perfect films. Every scene, it's something new, a new surprise. Either, as you said, the trick is laid or the answer is given. And then the next moment, David Bowie's in it. It's like, this is just like it's almost like this is a reward for film fans. Every single element is rewarding for us, isn't it?
Completely. That moment where he arrives, like you said, Bowie as well, which is obscure. He, of course, has done acting before, but I think this was Bowie coming out of retirement. Really, I mean, he had a huge heart attack in about 2002, 2003, which essentially ended his live performances as a musician. He really kind of in recovery hadn't done much. I'm sure he was sort of writing, and he was obviously an artist as well. But I think this surprised people in 2006, 2007 that he did this. But what I love about Tesla's inclusion in the story is that he's someone who existed in real life, so it gives it a touch of reality. But then as soon as you've got that kind of real world touching, immediately the things that he does are almost supernatural. So whereas you can understand, all of Borden and Angier's tricks are explained through sleight of hand or getting a reverse camera to show you how it's done. But Tesla's appearance creates, as you mentioned, he's built a teleporter, which to my knowledge doesn't exist even in today's technology.
No, and I like that because I think this is something I'll talk about in Interstellar. I think thematically there's a connection between the two, because what we've got is sort of almost like an intangible natural phenomenon, and we've also got that sort of juxtaposed or sort of put next to a very scientific viewpoint. And I think one of the things I take from Interstellar is that, yes, the science is very important, and like in this film, but also that human emotional level is there as well, and both things are working in tandem.
Yeah, definitely. Do you know what? Like I said, I feel like this is Nolan turned up to 11, but I have to admit, Interstellar is not one of the films I connected it to. But you're absolutely right. That is exactly the connection there. It's the supernatural and the natural, if you like, or the science and nature. It's those classic science fiction binary oppositions come into play, don't they?
And I like sometimes when it's almost like they don't provide an answer for, like, we don't have a scientific response for how the machine works. And it's not about, a statement of faith. It's just that message that some things are maybe ununderstandable, or you just don't need to understand them.
Like film. And that's it.
Yeah, exactly.
A film which has been deconstructed too much, or which how the special effects are done, it renders the effect useless, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's it. If it works, it works. It doesn't matter if you understand.
No, completely, and it's that master of illusion type thing. If we're joining the dots to other Nolan films, there are a few obviously key hallmarks. The obsession of both the characters is just like front and center, and coming with that are both of these characters are deeply flawed masculine characters. I mean, it's the one-upmanship is quite sort of sickening, isn't it? It renders both of them really quite unsympathetic as characters, which we're used to.
Definitely, and especially, both characters for different reasons, but Borden's character, because obviously, you're talking about spoilers, his obsession and the nature of his life and how he sort of presents himself to the world leads to his wife's Sarah, played by Rebecca Hall, takes her own life.
And
then we've got Scarlett Johansson is in it as well, and she starts out, doesn't she, as Angier's assistant, but she's treated so poorly and just reduced to an object. She goes to Borden, but again, these two characters, just through that obsession, just leave a wake of destruction behind them.
completely. Yeah, they alienate everyone around them, and lose people as well, which again sort of connects to both Batman and the next film, Inception, because when an obsession gets to the point that the people closest to you start either dying or disappearing or fading away. There's also, of course, the one that we've seen from the start, characters who make their own rules only to break them. And this happens with that first plot twist with Angier's wife dying. Borden's told very carefully what not to tie and what not we shouldn't tie, and immediately Borden changes the rules and decides to tie a different knot, which is the catalyst for all of these events.
Like that, and there's moments like that. I feel like Cobb's like that in Inception, where we never quite know if he's telling the truth. Like over the knot. I don't believe that he doesn't. I don't believe that Borden doesn't know what type of knot he tied. But I don't think he's lying. I think it's like some sort of denial. And that leaves a lot of room for the audience, don't they, to sort of view the film on any level, engage on deeper levels if they want, or just take it on the surface. And I think that we talked about that, but that's what separates, one of the many things that separates Nolan from contemporary blockbuster producers.
Yeah. He doesn't feel the need to have to explain it to us to leave some doubt. I mean, there's a straight line there to Memento, that memory is unreliable. First-hand, eyewitness testimony isn't worth anything. Borden literally doesn't know what knot he tied, and we can look at it and say, yeah, we know that he tied the other knot because Angier's wife gives him the nod. But at the same time, we're not sure whose head we're in at the time.
Well, exactly. I mean, are we getting what is effectively Borden's memory of the events? And if so, then he's probably going to remember it wrong or differently, or so that's why it is, a lot of people rate this very highly in Nolan's filmography, don't they? And I think it's these reasons why it just offers so much.
Does definitely. It's strange. I think that sometimes some of the twists in this film are so good that the final one, as to what Angier's has been doing, doesn't necessarily have the payoff you'd want it to, because it's, you think, oh, is there going to be something else perhaps even? But that final twist is really grisly, isn't it? I mean, it leaves such a sour taste over what he's been doing, because although you're not rooting for either of them to win, you kind of feel that Angier's might have the moral upper hand because he lost, his wife that died initially. I don't know. Borden is painted as such a terrible man that you don't expect Angier's to stoop quite so low, perhaps.
Yeah, I thought the casting is genius, because I think when you say it's Hugh Jackman, we have to put this in context for back then. He was what's it called, Wolverine and stuff like that, but I don't think he was quite the star, or he didn't have the range. I don't think we associated the range we do now with him then. And when you first watch the film, we wouldn't be surprised if some people are a bit taken back by his presence in the film, because he just looks so like clean and all that, and the world's a little bit grimy. But the casting of Hugh Jackman was inspired, I think, because I agree with what you said. I think we are more likely to view him as the leading man and give him more room. But out of the two, I think he's the most despicable of the two.
Completely.
Because I think he really does let the obsession drive. I mean, Borden still has a connection to reality, I think, in some sense. Yeah. Whereas he just goes, he just gets consumed by it.
I think Hugh Jackman gives this. What's interesting is he's almost a kind of opposite type of actor to Christian Bale as well, because we mentioned before Christian Bale being this sort of method actor who lives the part, who will physically change himself. And I know Hugh Jackman does that for the Wolverine, but he's also incredibly theatrical, Hugh Jackman, and he's perfect for being the character that was the vaudeville, or music hall act of the time. Hugh Jackman brings an over-the-topness. He does, he's someone who can, in the right film, really chew the scenery. But in this film, the scenery is so lavish and the set decoration is so gorgeous that it doesn't matter if he does that, because he fits right in, doesn't he?
Oh, yeah. And again, it fits his character and it serves the narrative, doesn't it? Because Angier's is the weaker magician, but he becomes more popular due to his showmanship and his charisma. Yeah. Whereas Borden is the better technician and the better magician, but he's very he hasn't got the personality, has he really? No. So it's like Nolan's films. We have all these male characters, and they're all fragments of a complete person in a way, but they're all separated. And yeah,
I think that's what's interesting there, is that because sometimes the accusation that Nolan leaves us a bit cold when it comes to his characters, and obviously we said both these characters are despicable in their own ways, but it's still a study of character, and that unfortunately, if you sort of see the warts and all of characters, then you're not going to probably like them in dramatic settings. This isn't these magicians had super lives and got on super well. This is them trying to destroy each other. Why would you identify? Why would you sympathize with one of them? It's So I think this film shows up the best of that character building.
Definitely. And I don't get those criticisms how his films are cold or soulless, or as you said, it's about his male characters. But those characters exist and those films exist.
Yeah.
This is just an alternative or something slightly different to it. I don't know what people want. Like, they want something different, but it's got to be the same as well. I can understand if you don't like Nolan's films, that's fair enough. But criticisms like that, it's not a criticism. You're just identifying a style. You know what I mean?
Interestingly, once again, the usually the moral center of the film, or not so much center, or the moral barometer of the film, is a side character, maybe like Lucius Fox in the Dark Knight trilogy, and this time I guess it's Cutter, isn't it?
Yeah.
Who's played by Michael Caine. We mentioned that Michael Caine gets a little role in each of Nolan's movies since Batman. Yeah. This is the biggest role he has for Nolan, isn't it?
Yeah, it's quite prominent.
It is, yeah, and it's great, isn't it? I think it's Michael Caine's quite famous for taking on pretty much any roles, but I think this is one of his stronger parts as a supporting actor.
Yeah, and it's great to see him in a prominent role. That's important, but he's quite reserved, isn't he? He's not.
Yeah.
He's not like the the nosy neighbor Michael Caine.
Yeah. No, it's great, and of course, I can't take claim for this, but on one video I saw many years ago, Cutter is obviously the name for an editor in a film. It's a nickname for it, so the film references kind of pile up again.
That's Inception.
Yeah, good. Well, like I said, I wax lyrical about this film, and I like The Dark Knight Rises. I think so much of it is big and daft and over the top, and then so much of it is also quite dark and grimy and grungy and fiddly. Yeah. And I love the fact that I couldn't describe what happens in this film in any order because it's so convoluted.
Yeah, and it's so brilliantly made, isn't it? And although it's only 5 on my list, it is one of the most watchable of Nolan films and the most entertaining and the most gripping. So if I was going to watch a Nolan film at this weekend, I would probably go for Prestige before Dark Knight Rises. Yeah. Even though Dark Knight Rises is higher on my list because it's just so brilliant and so perfectly formed. Yeah.
I think films, again, and once again, proving that he can really be challenging because you have to pay attention. I mean, you have to watch closely because you would lose the sense of it. I think akin to something like The Usual Suspects, this film shows you can have a film that will really challenge an audience to pay attention and keep up, whilst also being just plain fun, really fun.
Yeah, and it's easy to misunderstand how hard that is. Because right, again, a lot of criticisms of Nolan is, he's too complex, his films are too confusing, or he's trying too hard or something like that. But if you just take this film in isolation and look at it, this is an incredibly complex film. And the way it's structured is incredibly complex. And, it does take, you have to pay attention and that type of stuff. But to make something so complex, but also make it so accessible, I think this shows how people may not like his work and his style, but as a technician, he is incredible.
Yeah, definitely. Without doubt. Right from conception, script, ideas, right through to final edit, because there's so many points in which this could go wrong, especially knowing what Hollywood is like for making movies. Yeah. This could have gone wrong at any point, but this must have had that stamp of approval, as he must have had complete control of this.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it would have just gone messy, I think.
Yeah. I'd love to know how he's honestly perceived in like the halls of Hollywood, in the studio heads, like. I wondered if like producers or studio heads, like when they know Nolan's coming, like it's so much, not like fear, but it's like just let him do it and get out of the way. Or is there? I wonder if there's like a studio head out there who's waiting for this. Oh, I'm going to put Nolan in his place and show him who he is, because he's such an enigmatic character. It's hard to place him in Hollywood, isn't it? I find
definitely. I mean, maybe he, well, he's been doing it for long enough, 20 years now, but it would have been nice a few years ago to think that he represented a new way of doing things. But I can't think of too many filmmakers that have followed in that wake too much. But
there's no studios that'll support it. I think Warner's is an outlier in that respect. So we got a big thanks to Warner Brothers for giving this guy $250 million to make these films. Like,
hashtag break up the studios.
Oh yeah, definitely. All except Warner's.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, that's great. And again, one of those that we could probably talk about ad infinitum, but I urge anyone who hasn't seen this film to go and see it. It always, because of that stupid poster as well, it's always made to look like one of the little minor films in his career, and it happened in between the Batman Begins and Dark Knight, which makes it seem like, oh, was this a side project? It's not. It's everything you need to know about him, and where he was going at that time. So fantastic. Great. All right. Thanks very much, Matt. We've got we're into our top 3 now, isn't it? Yeah. Top 3 films to review, and then Tenet, which we're obviously leading up to, and see where that would fit into the top 11, I guess. Great. Anyway, thanks very much for that. And we'll see everyone next time. Bye bye.